Now, as many of us know, about 3/4 of our total body weight is composed of water. So if 65 to 75% of your body weight is held by water, maybe we should take a deeper look into why the human body needs that amount of water. And more specifically in this video, let's talk about how water plays a key role to the health of your spine and how you can utilize appropriate hydration to helping overcome degenerative disc disease. Hey everybody, it's Mike with Total Physical Therapy, and in this episode we're continuing our discussion on degenerative disc disease of the spine. Now, in this series we've covered elements such as rest and relaxation, and now we are talking about the third ingredient to helping overcome spine complications, and that is the concept of hydration. So as I mentioned earlier, about 3/4 of our total body weight is composed of water. So if we have naturally grown into beings that are composed 3/4 of water, we should pay attention to its importance. So let's first talk about where water is stored. Now, water in healthy individuals is stored within the blood vessels and within our numerous cells within the human body. But in states of complication and sometimes in pathology, that water exceeds those boundaries of those vessels and those cells. And I like to use the comparison of a river. So while water is contained within the banks of a river is naturally and free flowing, it's only when those waters spill out over those banks that things can become destructive. And in the human body, this is true too. So when water is going to seep out of vessels and cells, that fluid goes somewhere, and that abyss is called the interstitial space. And when this happens, we start to experience things as edema and swelling of our limbs and swelling of certain tissues within the human body. What are some things that happen when that fluid starts seeping out into that abyss? Not only do we see changes in the size of appendages, we're also going to see an increase in our total body weight. So when you step on and off of that scale each and every day and you see these fluctuations, a lot of that fluctuation has to resolve around appropriate levels of hydration, overhydration, or in states of dehydration. And so a lot of people will get really excited when they see those really quick changes to their weight on the body scale, but those quick changes are usually not anything more than changes in our total body water. Now, other things that happen when we have excessive amounts of fluid in addition to increased body weight, we start to have increased pain sensitivity. Now, there's thousands of pain receptors throughout the body, and these pain receptors, some of them are designed to witness and experience changes to pressure. And these changes in pressure out into this interstitial space can increase the sensitivity and the awareness of those pain receptors. Now, swelling also impedes healing. So just like those flood waters expanding out over the banks of a river, they cause destruction out into the adjacent areas of land. Well, the same thing happens with this fluid in the human body, and it basically suffocates a lot of tissue and can cause further damage to those tissues nearby until those fluids are reseeded back into those vessels and back into those cells, into the channels that naturally carry away this excessive fluid in the body. Now, excessive water loss can not only lead to that rapid drop on the bathroom scale, but it can lead to the signs and symptoms of dehydration. And in severe cases, this can alter not only our mental function, but also our physical function as well. So while we oftentimes get excited about these changes on the scale, keep in mind that those early changes in a positive or negative direction are oftentimes directed by nothing more than the total volume of water throughout the body. So now that we've learned about where water is actually stored, let's talk about some of those aspects of how much can the body actually handle at once. So on average, a typical healthy adult is going to be able to take in between 34 to 68 ounces of fluid at any given time. Any more than this in a short amount of time, and the body just can't process it, and it's going to go ahead and flush it. Now, having spoken about flushing, let's talk about how much the average healthy adult actually expels in a given day. On average, about 2 liters, or rather 84 ounces of fluid, is going to be what the healthy adult will get rid of every single day. Now, how are we going to get rid of it? Primarily through urination and our bowel movements, but also through our breathing and respiratory rates. Having said that, talk about situations that can increase our water loss. Now, any event that's going to increase our respiratory rate is typically going to increase our perspiration and our core temperature as well to a slight degree. Any increases in those 3 aspects are going to increase the rate at which we get rid of water. When it comes to the respiratory rate, the humidity coming out of our breath at a faster rate naturally is going to lead to more water loss. But when it comes to perspiration is simply a method at which the body is trying to push water out through our skin, and the moment that water is able to evaporate off of our skin helps to cool us. So it's a counteraction to our increasing body temp, but it also leads to more rapid and more amounts of volume of water loss through that mechanism. Now, when we talk about core temperature, I kind of mentioned that previously. Now, there's a lot of disease states that can increase our core temperature, but core temperature can also be influenced by our environment. So hot, humid areas are going to increase that core temperature, thus the perspiration, sometimes our respiratory rate. You combine all of that with increased physical demand, physical activity, and now all of a sudden you're talking about more rapid levels of water loss. Okay, so we've talked about how much the body can actually process at any given time. We've talked about elements that help increase the amount of losing more than the typical 84 ounces of water a day. Now let's talk about how much water you need in a day. So as I mentioned, we typically expel about 84 ounces of fluid. Well, it's a good thing that our body does a really good job of helping try to regulate that 75% total volume of water, but in order to do that, it needs to have a healthy relationship of fluid in versus fluid out. So in simple terms, if you on average are going to get rid of about 84 ounces of fluid, you need to seek to take in about 84 ounces of fluid on any given day, knowing that you can't take in more than about 68 ounces at any given time. So spread that out over the course of the day. So in those simple terms, taking in about 84 ounces scattered out over the course of the day is one way to kind of look at this. Other recommendations include the old adage, 8-ounce glasses of fluid every day. That's all kind of stemming around that 84-ounce average in and out volume. Some of the research suggests 1/2 to 1 ounce of fluid with any given pound of body weight. And while all these recommendations give us similar total volumes over the course of the day, there's no specific guidance on this because we don't have absolute scientific clarity to these individual and environmental variables. You just can't make a general assumption for everybody because there's too many unknowns. So there are some recommendations that you should drink when you're thirsty. Now, this recommendation comes off of the fact that indeed, when we are thirsty, that's your body trying to tell you that it needs fluid. Now, the reason why we don't advocate for waiting for that response is given the fact that this thirst mechanism is typically triggered in a healthy individual anywhere from 1 to 2% loss of water volume in the body. So at this level of 1 to 2% loss, there's already scientific working knowledge that it is possible to already experience both cognitive as well as physical impairment just at this 1 to 2% level of water loss. If we're already experiencing both physical as well as cognitive impairment at that 1 to 2% loss, there's just no rational reason why we should be waiting for that thirst mechanism to trigger our demand and requirements for water. Furthermore, along the line of thirst, we know that as individuals get older, the sensitivity for that thirst mechanism actually declines. And so while in a younger, healthy adult, that 1 to 2% loss of body water triggers that thirst mechanism, in older and in pathologic states, that sensitivity is actually poor. So you could be exceeding 3, 4, 5% body weight loss in water prior to that thirst mechanism kicking in. There's also many medications, such as pain medications, that reduce that sensitivity. So many people in today's world, especially around neck and back pain, are on pain medications. Know that those medications oftentimes suppress that thirst mechanism. And in the clinic, we witness this all the time. Individuals come in and we routinely encourage them to drink water throughout their interaction and their interventions and therapy. But a lot of them say, no, thank you, I'm not thirsty. And we constantly have to reiterate the fact that their thirst mechanisms can't be relied on as well as if they were in healthy states and off of those pain meds. Okay, so now the big thing and why you came to this video in the first place. What does water have to do with spine health? More specifically, how does it apply to degenerative disc changes of the spine? Well, we're going to specifically explore the part of the spine known as the intervertebral disc, okay? Those discs that I've talked about in previous videos. First, I want to mention what those discs are actually composed of. Two things: water and proteins. Multiple proteins, and the fluid is all the disc is made up of. So while water makes up 3/4 of our total body weight, so does it make up 3/4 of the total volume of the discs of the spine. We've already kind of mentioned why it's so important for our body weight, for our body to have that much water. Now I'm going to go into the deeper details of why it's so important for our disc to have that volume of water. Now, in a future coming episode, we're going to talk about nutrition of the spine, and I'll go into this in a little bit deeper detail. But the discs of the spine are avascular in nature. This means that they do not have a direct blood supply. Now, if some tissues in the human body have limited or no blood supply, they are going to have a reduced capacity to actually function and heal. This would be the case in the disc too, but luckily we have a mechanism called diffusion by which nutrients and minerals are actually seeping between the bones and the discs of the spine. So between this interface of the bone and the disc, we have nutrients coming in through diffusion. We also have waste materials working their way out. Now, this exchange of nutrients in, waste material out, it is improved with good volumes of fluid within the disc. Without consistent and adequate hydration within the human body, and thus within the spinal discs, our nutritional support and the waste removal just becomes stagnant. It reduces the viability, or rather the cells within the disc, their ability to actually carry out their function, and it increases the likelihood of damage. Damage typically down the road, resulting in those degenerative disc changes. Furthermore, adequate hydration and thus the nutrition of the disc is going to aid in the thickness of them. And when we talk about thickness of these discs, what we're talking about is how plush they are, creating increased space and distance between two adjacent bones. That increased space and distance is paramount to creating increased gapping and spacing in the joints of the spine, as well as increasing the space upon which the nerves are going to leave the spine. So we like to say happy spaces equals happy faces, because if any of you have already been dealing with nerve-related pain generated from these discs, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's not a fun moment in time to be in when these are compressed and irritated. In addition to the increased plushness, therefore the increased space between those adjacent bones, with adequate nutrition and hydration, these discs are going to be resistant to compressive forces, but they're also going to be resistant to shearing forces, forces that might encourage these bones to move forward or backward against each other, or laterally from side to side. Those are extreme examples seen in degenerative changes of the spine, often precipitated by these dehydrated discs. The collapse of those discs reduce resilience of them. Now, over the course of 24-hour period, it is normal and natural for some of that height to be lost. And indeed, if you were to measure your height first thing out of bed in the morning compared to last thing in the evening, you would find that you have lost total body height each and every day. And like I just mentioned, this is normal and natural, but in dehydrated states, that can be excessive. And so a lot of that collapse of those bones, leading to potential irritation, impingement on the nerves, as well as reduced resistance to tolerate forward, backward, side to side stresses. These things are going to come with dehydrated states. So while it's natural to lose some of that height, well hydrated discs are going to minimize that loss. Now, we also know that while we spend about 2 times the amount of time upright, so sitting, standing, walking, we also know in those hours of recumbency, predominantly being sleeping, we know that the discs are capable in normal situations, they are capable of fully rehydrating themselves if we've got that adequate hydration throughout the given day. So that brings me to the point on a previous video where we were talking about the ramifications of adequate rest. In that video, I discussed the rest that you should be seeking in periods of spine pain was indeed consistent levels of sleep each and every given night. Well, this is one of the reasons why I said that, because we know that disc rehydration is occurring on a daily basis, predominantly when we are unweighted in recumbent or sleeping positions. So I'll reiterate it one more time. Adequate levels of rest, consistent levels of rest, and adequate daily hydration are going to improve the probability that every given night when you are resting, your discs are fully rehydrating themselves. Okay, so now you know a little bit about where water is stored in the body, how much we can process at any given time, how much we actually get rid of, and thus how much we should take in. You specifically know now why it's imperative for the health of your spine. Let's wrap up in talking about how we take in water on a given day. Now, one of the easiest ways is to just monitor how much fluid you actually take in a given day. You can use really simple things like Nalgene bottles with gradients for fluid ounces, or you could just simply use the consistent size cups every day, and so you know how many ounces of fluid are in the cup that you use on a routine basis. But let's not also forget the fact that food consumption is going to contribute to about half of a liter per day in most states. And fruits and vegetables are the most viable options for these because those, on the whole, they are composed of about 80 to 90% water. And so when we're introducing a lot of fruits and vegetables in our diet, we're intaking a lot of that fluid through those sources in addition to all the nutrients that food provides for us. But the fluid is also going to come in through milk products, yogurts, and soups. So how do you test for whether or not you have adequate fluid intake? One of the easiest ways to test for appropriate levels of hydration is to actually monitor your urine color. Early in the morning, that color of your urine should be a pale lemonade color or clear. Anything that's darker, looking along the likes of apple juice, could be an indicator that you're actually in a dehydrated state. Okay guys, so in summary, this is our third video in this series along degenerative disc changes, and in this video specifically we've addressed not only why the body is composed of so much water, but also how this specifically applies to the health of your spine. And in summary, those discs, 75% water, the rest of it's proteins, and together those water and proteins act for the adequate nutrition in, waste removal out, the reduction of compression in the spine, and the reduction of abnormal shearing forces in the spine. Those things ultimately can contribute to increased rates of degenerative changes of the spine. So hope you guys found this information useful. If you did and you know others that would benefit from this, go ahead and share this with them. Slap that thumbs up on your social medias and on YouTube. Let us know that this information is valuable to you and you want more. Coming up in this lecture on degenerative disc disease, we are going to tackle two more elements. The next element we're going to tackle is nutrition and how nutrition plays into the health of the spine. And lastly, we're going to talk about physical activity and how you can use that to your advantage to reduce the rates of degenerative changes of the spine, to improve your current limitations because of those changes, and how to ultimately lead healthy, productive lives. And as always, thanks. We'll talk to you soon.